Interpretation? Well, the Bible's interpretation. I'm just going to be going off the cuff here. I've heard the story once or twice. John 18, verses 15 through 18, and John 18, verses 25 through 27. So I want you to take yourself to Jerusalem. I want you to take yourself to Jerusalem on a late morning night. If we go with when we celebrate Easter and everything, just say in April. At night, it gets down to about 30 degrees, just so you're aware, right? So Jesus has been arrested. A crowd of soldiers is leading them away. Now Peter decides he's going to follow. Now at this point, the disciples had scattered because, Jesus had said, it's me that you want, let them go, and they took off. But Peter, he kind of stuck around in the shadows a little bit. And as they're leading Jesus away, he follows. Now, he follows all the proper rules when you're tailing somebody, right? He doesn't stick too close. He stays far back. Every once in a while, you stop because you know what they're going. Where they're going. There's only one way they can go, so you can pull back a little bit more. He's doing his best to be, as I heard yesterday on Batman with Adam West, the Mad Hatter said he was being incognito. So he's holding back, he's being incognito, and nobody knows that he's there. He thinks he's good to go. He's got to find out what's going on. Yeah, maybe he's thinking about the events. I mean, if you think about this is rather traumatic. His master, his teacher, has been taken away by Roman soldiers. He himself had drew a sword and cut off somebody's ear, only to be rebuked and watch as his master heals the ear. So he's following along, contemplating all that's taking place. He's scared. I mean, what's going to happen? Right? This is kind of a new experience. It's dark, and he's just following along. And then finally they get to the courtyard of the high priest. Now, this is where it gets tricky for him. He thinks he's good because it's dark and nobody really recognizes him, and he's got to be close to the action. He's got to know exactly what's going on. So he goes to the gate to be let in. And this is where it starts to get dicey for him. He goes to the gate to be let in, and a servant girl looks at him. And the servant girl says to him, "Wait, weren't you with Jesus?" This takes him aback. He thought he was good, right? It's dark out. No one really knows what took place. And the servant girl comes up and says, "Wait a second, weren't you with Jesus?" So what does he do? What happens in that situation, right? You're taken aback, you're taken by surprise, you're afraid to be found out, you're worried about what's going to happen to you, but you just got to know what's going on. So what comes to Peter's mind? The easiest thing to do is to deny it. So what does he say? Not me. I don't know what you're talking about. No. And it had begun. In order to protect himself, to get to where he needed to go, he just says, "I don't know. I don't know him. I don't know what you're talking about." And he comes into the courtyard. So, at this point, that's weird. Is it me? All right, I'm adjusted. I apologize. So, as he tells this first lie, he thinks he's good to go, right? He gets into the courtyard. Whew. Oh, man, I dodged a bullet there. They almost put me together with them. My life was almost in danger. But I'm good now. It's all right. So, a couple minutes pass. He's walking through the courtyard, and he's starting to get a little cold, right? If we assume any time, really, because it's the desert, it's getting cold. It's at night. So he's walking. He's trying to, man, I'm getting a little cold. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I can't believe she recognized me. Oh, that was a close one, but I'm doing okay. And then a second servant girl, he passes, and she glances at him. Hey, weren't you with Jesus? So now at this point, he's already told one lie. Right? And as often happens when you tell a lie, I don't know him. I don't know the man. But as he's saying this, he feels the heat. His face is getting a little flushed. The only thing that saves him is the fact that it's dark enough that it's hard to see that he's turning red as he does it. He's now compounded his lie with yet another lie. But he's on that track. He's got to make sure he doesn't arouse more suspicion. But other people have heard this. Other people are whispering about him now. So he tries to keep low. He tries to keep out of everybody's sight. He just wants to know what's going on. At this point, he's gotten away with it twice. A little bit of sigh of relief. The crisis is over. No one's going to recognize me. It's all going to be okay. Now it's cold, and he finally goes to where the soldiers are warming themselves by a fire. So he steps up and he starts warming himself as well. Now, mind you, there's probably quite a few people gathered around. They gathered quite a crowd. And you're in the courtyard of the high priest, so there's people that are just onlookers trying to figure out what's going on. There's people that are supposed to be there going about their duties. You've got the maids and the servants. And you've got, of course, the Roman soldiers, the regiment that went out to get Jesus with Judas. And so they're all gathered around and milling around, and it's cold, so they're trying to warm themselves by the fire. So, he's getting cold. He gets a little bit closer to the fire. And as he's starting to feel a little bit of relief, as he's starting to feel warmth come back into him, guy speaks up right across from him. And he says, "Didn't I see you with him in the olive grove?" He perks up a little bit. Now, this time, see, it's a little bit different. This time, it's not a servant. In fact, it's someone that's connected. Because this is a relative of the guy whose ear he cut. He's putting two together. He's seeing Peter. Peter starts to feel the heat. Peter starts to feel, maybe I'm in trouble here. I thought I was getting away with it. I mean, they're about to take Jesus out. I see movement, but this guy recognizes me. What do I do? Now, I want to take you back to Peter's origin. What was he by trade? Fisherman. And what's the one thing that everybody always says about sailors? Cursed like a sailor. So Peter, at this point, overcome with fear that he's about to be found out, blurts out curses. "I don't know him. Why don't you leave me alone?" I didn't really move that much. I don't know. That's enough. Hold on a second. Is that better? All right. Okay. "Why don't you leave me alone?" And as soon as the words left his mouth, what happened? soon as the words left his mouth. And suddenly it comes to him. Just a few hours ago, as he sat in the upper room, kind of half listening to what was going on, as Jesus says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another." As Jesus is giving this commandment, he's thinking back to what Jesus had just said previously. I'm going to go away, and you can't follow me. So he's mulling on this, and he kind of only half listens as Jesus said, "Love one another." So while Jesus is saying this, as he's saying, "This is how you'll know, this is how the world will know who I am because of your love for each other," he pipes up and says, "I understand that, but where are you going? Why can't I follow you?" This is Peter. This is the man who had the courage to get out of the boat as he saw his master walking towards him. He had the courage to take a few steps until he looked back. This is Peter who, when his teacher was in trouble, drew his sword and slashed off the ear of a servant that had come to seize him. This is Peter who was filled with such passion, such brashness, such arrogance. "I'm willing to die for you." And Jesus gives a half chuckle and says, "Die for me, Peter? By the time the rooster crows, you will have denied me 3 times. And even then, it didn't sink into him. Well, I know that Jesus said this, but I will do anything I can to follow him. As soon as the rooster crows, it comes to him. And he breaks down, starts crying. He never expected to be questioned by a servant girl. It was so easy to just say, "I don't know him." He never expected to be questioned a second time and have to build upon the lie. Those were just servants. That was nothing. It's not like anybody important. And then he's questioned by a relative of the man whose ear he cut. Suddenly we're gaining importance. Now, I would like to believe that if Peter was standing in front of the high priest with Jesus, that he would say, "Yes, I know this man," and he would be willing to die for him. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that there is a problem with faith here. I think what Peter had a problem with was his courage. Where was he getting his strength? Who was he relying on to get him through? When Christ is telling him to love each other, to love your fellow disciple, and that is how you will tell the world about me. They'll know who I am. He's not thinking about that. He's thinking about, well, where's he going? I would die for him. He was totally unprepared. Peter's tears, the words that are used here is that he was weeping bitterly. He was so torn by what had just taken place. I've denied him. Not only did I deny him, but he knew it. He told me I would. What is going on? How is that possible that this could happen? At that point in time, I would say that these tears were a good thing. His denials had not only hurt him, but hurt his teacher. while he had the courage to follow him, didn't have the courage to stand up and say that he not only knew him, but he loved him. Tears are good if they lead to a new devotion, if they lead to repentance, as they do in Peter's case. But I would also point out that Judas wept when Judas realized what he had done. Judas wept, and those tears led to Judas's death. Peter, in this particular case, did not handle himself well. But in the end, the reason that I would tell you that it was not Peter's faith that failed is because in Luke chapter 22, Jesus tells Peter, I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And I guarantee you that if Christ prays for you that your faith will not fail, your faith will not fail. So his courage fails him, but his faith does not. And because of that bitter weeping, that understanding of what had taken place, he became stronger in his faith. He started to lose some of those things that had caused this situation to begin with. He started paying attention. He started thinking before speaking, listening to what's going on around him. It's true that Peter was loud, profane, and vulgar that night. It's also true that underneath it all, he loved Jesus, and that's why he was in the courtyard. With all of his faults, at his heart, he's a good man that just failed to live up to his best intentions. He relied on his own strength and his own understanding. Even the statement that, Lord, I will follow you until I die, is a statement from here, from himself, relying on himself and not relying on God. Now Jesus, just like he knew that Judas was about to betray him, he also knew that Peter would betray him in this way, that Peter would deny him when faced with a difficult decision. So how did Jesus treat Peter? When he says, die for me? You will deny me 3 times. Jesus doesn't criticize him. He doesn't say, you're going to deny me 3 times, and I really resent that, and I don't know if I can have anything to do with you anymore. He doesn't cut off relationship with him. Remember, he loves him without regard to the circumstances. Displays the love that God displays for us. He never gives up on him. He never walked away and ended the relationship, saying, I just don't know if I can have anything to do with you. You're not even going to acknowledge the fact that we've been hanging out for the last 3 years. Jesus knew about Peter's denial long before it happened. He knew what Peter would do. He knew how Peter would react. And he knew exactly the man that Peter would be afterwards. I want you to think about this. Peter, at this point, is broken. What happens when you break your arm and the bones meld? They become stronger. When your faith is tested, it becomes stronger. It's not a coincidence that one of the themes of today has been trials and tribulations that we go through. You have 2 reactions, but in James, it's very specific when it says, consider it joy because it produces perseverance. You will grow stronger when you struggle with your failings. That doesn't mean that you dwell on them. Did Peter sit there and dwell on it? No. How do you think it is that this story that personally happened to Peter appears in all 4 Gospels? Who else was there? The disciples had scattered. Peter is the disciple that followed him to the courtyard. The only other witnesses were the servants and the guards and the relative of Zacchaeus. How do you think the story got told? Peter himself shared his own failings. Peter himself used this as an opportunity to teach others about the sovereignty of Jesus. God seeks us out, though we are broken. When we do things we just shouldn't do. We have 2 things that we can do. We can take the worldview and we could hide our mistakes. We can lie about those things. Even this last week I heard, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. We can hide our mistakes. Right? We just lie about them more. If you lie about them more, they go away, you bury them. They become skeletons in the closet that no one can see. Peter has the opportunity. No one saw this take place. But instead of taking the easy way out, we experience some of his growth at that moment as he becomes so low, as he openly breaks out and weeps for what has taken place. This is proof that a couple of things have changed for him. In his failure, as this pebble fell, he lost his vanity. He lost his pride. He lost his rash impulsiveness. He lost his unreliability. He lost those things that he didn't really need. Those things that have served him well as he was a fisherman. They have served him well for several years, but he doesn't need them anymore. When God looks at you and me, He doesn't look at our failures. In fact, the very reason that He sent His Son was to take care of those. He loves us without regard to those things. So perhaps this last week you were under pressure. You had a lot of stress going on. You hear people talking, slandering Christianity. Aren't you one of them Christians? Don't you say that you're a Christian? How does that stack up with what I see in the media? Can you explain that to me? Why would you be so hypocritical like that? What do you say? What do you do? John, I asked you to have a verse handy. Please read it. Yes, I'm sorry. In that moment, when you're pressured, when it's time to be put to the task, who are you relying on? Where do you get your strength? Are you strong because you're strong? Or are you strong because your Lord is strong? What's your focus? And when you fall, you become broken. When you experience these times of weakness, when you feel like you've let everybody down. Jasmine, can you read your verse, please? God is there for you. Even when you're broken, even when you rely on yourself and you fail. If you are contrite, if you seek redemption, He is there for you. God can take our brokenness and make us stronger than we were before. We have an opportunity when we make mistakes to hide them. We have an opportunity when we make our mistakes to dwell in our brokenness. We have the opportunity to keep the focus on ourselves. Oh, why did I do that? Why is this happening to me? Why is my church building being vandalized? Why are there homeless people sleeping beside that even though I've asked them not to do that? Why did they take my firewood? Why does TNT want us to give them even more money? We have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to rise above this. We have the opportunity to continue on the path, stronger, because God has strengthened us. Stronger because we've lost those things that we don't need. So as Peter lost his vanity, as he lost his unruly behavior, his unreliability, we can lose those things as well. And it may not be those exact things that we have that are tying us up. We may not be as brash as Peter. But there are things that we do need to lose. There are those times where we do rely on ourselves. We rely on all the skills that we have because I'm good. I got skills. When we rely on those skills and we forget where those skills came from. When we rely on our own understanding. When we lose our focus on who He is. If we stop paying attention to His words. We have that chance to fall as well. It's not the fact that you fall. It's what happens after that fall. Do you weep bitterly like Judas and dwell on what you have done and your own faults, and you bury yourself deeper under the rubble that's been created? Or do you turn like Peter and understand what has taken place? Do you start paying more attention? Do you renew your understanding and strength where you should find it at its source? Are your ears open? Are you listening to what your Lord is saying? Now is the perfect opportunity to quiet your hearts. Quiet those internal voices to think about what exactly is taking place.